let's film another end of the year video because we don't already have enough of those flying around. Hello everybody, my name is Jenny and today I bring to you my top, I don't know how many yet, I haven't decided, but my top books of this year. So let's go! Starting off on my list is the Percy Jackson series by Riordan, and this includes the Percy Jackson and the Olympians and Heroes of Olympus, and I read these at the very beginning of this year, 2013. Yes, it's still 2013. I read all 8 of them till that point because House of Hades wasn't out yet, and I loved them and they were amazing, and I was so heart-wrenched by Mark of Athena. If you don't know the Percy Jackson series, have you been living under a rock? But for those of you, don't feel bad, for those of you who actually don't know, Percy Jackson is a book series about a guy named Percy Jackson, and he's a demigod, which means he's a half-god, and he goes on adventures and a lot of stuff goes on, and there's a bunch of really good characters, and it's a funny novel, it's witty, and it's fast-paced, and you should go read it because you're seriously lacking some quality literature right there. Next up is The Importance of Being Earnest by Oscar Wilde. And I think it is, Oscar Wilde is actually an Irish author, but The Importance of Being Earnest is a satire on British society. It's actually a play, and I read it because my friend Sonia has been raving about it on and on and on, and it's like her favorite novel, and so I gave it a try and I loved it because it is so hilarious. It's about this guy named Jack who's from the countryside but who calls himself Earnest because he wants to go to the city and live a different life, but then back on the countryside he's Jack again, and then there's a lot of burn burying going on. Don't get confused. And then people get confused and then stuff happens. Misunderstandings and funny situations arise. And I think it can be considered, is it considered classic literature? Well, anyways, it is very fast to read and it is easy to get through, and if you kind of want to venture into something different, something more old school, classic, give it a try. It's a lot of fun to read. I loved it. It was awesome. Next up in my list is The Chaos Walking Trilogy by Patrick Ness. And I actually want to say Patrick Ness in general because he also brought out more than this year, and I love Patrick Ness's writing, at least as much as I've read so far. And The Chaos Walking Trilogy is about this planet. People from our world, Earth, have left Earth and went to colonize a new planet called the New World. And then a plague breaks out, and people in this Prentice Town, there's this boy Todd growing up in Prentice Town, and he's told that all the women have died from this plague, and it has left the men with the ability to hear each other's thoughts. But then stuff happens, and the fate of the world changes, and Todd is amidst of everything. And the good thing is, it is YA, but what Patrick Ness manages to do is just to get you to think about morality, think about existence, think about the meaning of life, and he does it so brilliantly in all his books. And I think The Ask and the Answer is my favorite, probably because of the title. The title is just so awesome. And then I also really love More Than This, which isn't part of the trilogy, but that title is just brilliant. Another author that I actually really enjoyed this year was Rainbow Rowell, and Rainbow Rowell, she published 3 books up till now, and that woman is a publishing machine because she's bringing out another book next year. And the book that we're going to mention this now is Fangirl. And Fangirl came out this September, I think. It's about a girl named Kath, and she's transitioning into college. And she's kind of shy, not very social, and she's having problems with adjusting to her college life. And then, on the other hand though, she is internet famous because she writes fan fiction, and her fan fiction gets a lot of hits. So it's kind of about this girl living with both sides of her life and kind of finding her place in this new environment and growing into herself. And this is one thing, the story, whatever she writes is adorable. Everything that she writes is just freaking adorable. Just adorable, 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 and I feel like I gush about Rainbow Rowell every second video, so adorable. Did I say adorable? And then there's Jane Eyre. And I actually had a bit of a prejudice towards Jane Eyre in the beginning because I thought it was along the lines of Jane Austen. I really love Jane Austen. I love her novels. Some of them are a bit slow to read through, but yeah, I thought it was about social stuff. But oh my god, Jane Eyre is batshit crazy. I don't know how Charlotte Brontë did that, but that novel is not what I expected at all. It is awesome. It is awesome. There's so much going on, but it is just mind-blowingly different from what I expected, which I love because it just totally broke through my expectations. So to give you a little bit of a summary, if you haven't read Jane Eyre yet, it's about this girl, or this woman named Jane Eyre, and she basically, the story begins a bit slow. It's about her growing up. She's an orphan. She lives with her aunt and her cousins. They don't get along very well, so she gets stuck in the school, and afterwards, when she grows up, she becomes a governess on Mr. Rochester's property, mansion thing, whatever it's called in Old Britain. Estate, that's the word we're looking for, Mr. Rochester's estate called Thornfield. And then things happen, crazy things happen, and the book is awesome. If you don't like classic because you think it's boring, give Jane Eyre a try. Jane Eyre is not boring at all. Like, seriously, give it a try. Next up is Clockwork Princess by Cassandra Clare. And I don't think I have to explain this a lot. I think most of you guys have already read it. But Clockwork Princess is the last book in the Infernal Devices series by Cassandra Clare. And I love that series. It was a great last book, a great ending to the series. It made me laugh, it made me cry, it made me feel all the things, which was amazing. And Will and Tessa and Jem and Cecily and all these characters. I love the Infernal Devices so much more than the Mortal Instruments. It's hard to describe. I just feel like this is a really, really good kind of steampunk, Victorian, urban fantasy. It's not even urban fantasy, but kind of like YA series, which I love to recommend to other people because it's just perfection. Like, the whole package is just right. The characters are good, the plot is interesting, and then everything just kind of clicks together. You can tell that it is very well thought out, which is kind of lacking in the Mortal Instruments a bit. So yeah, I'm so happy about this series. I love this series a lot. A lot. Moving in on my top 3. In third place is Throne of Glass and Crown of Midnight, the Throne of Glass series by Sarah J. Maas. And if you have not read Throne of Glass, then what are you doing here? Because Throne of Glass is freaking awesome. Throne of Glass, the first book, I would say the first book actually is kind of more on par with all the other YA books. It doesn't distinguish itself so much. But then Crown of Midnight just opens up this door full of epic potential, because Throne of Glass is going to be a 6-book series, which means there's so much potential for the world to grow. I'll just tell you quick what Throne of Glass is about. Throne of Glass is about this assassin called Selena Serdothian, and she gets caught and she gets put in the salt mines. And then at some point she gets a chance to participate in the king's competition to become the royal assassin, which gives her freedom. So the first book is kind of like a competition book, stuff like that. So it's very easy. The story doesn't go very deep, but the characters are brilliant in it. And then in the second book, it just delves into this world, and it fits though. Like, there's not a big difference between the two books. Like, the transition is very smooth, but it just delves into this world and just opens up this door, and you're just like, oh my god, this is going to be the greatest series ever. Maybe not ever, but this is gonna be a really, 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 really good series. And I think that Throne of Glass is quite suitable for people who want to read fantasy but who are kind of intimidated by fantasy, because it is YA fantasy, so it's a bit easier to read, but it has a lot of those awesome fantasy elements in it. So I highly recommend it, and go read it, guys. It's awesome. Number 2 is Codex Alera. And I've talked about Codex Alera so much on this channel, and if you still don't know it, okay, let's start off. So I was introduced to Codex Alera by Reagan this summer, and we kind of been rallying a lot about it. Rallying. And Codex Alera is fantasy, high fantasy, and it is just mind-blowingly good. Mind-blowingly good. If you don't know, again, the first book is Furies of Calderon, and it's basically about this realm called Alera, and people have magical powers in which they can control elements, and these elements manifest into furies. And then there's this boy, Tavi, who doesn't have any Furies, and then shit goes down and everything goes crazy and Tabby has to save the world, basically. And then, this is only the first book, just saying. The first book, I have to admit, the first book was a bit hard for me to get into because there's a lot of world building going on, and then you have to get to know a lot of these characters, and it's a lot to take in the beginning. So the first book is good, it's like really good, but then after the second book, the series just goes whoosh, and it just takes off, and you're just like, oh my god, you're just flat on the floor, and you're like, what just happened? What just happened? And on the top spot is another fantasy book, and it is Mistborn by Brandon Sanderson. So Mistborn is about this empire called the Final Empire, and it is reigned over by the Lord Ruler, who's essentially evil. And the society in Mistborn is divided into nobility, which were the people who helped Lord Ruler defeat the deepness, evilness, which actually enabled him to become the ruler, and the Ska, who are slaves and who are propagated to be dumb and stupid and inferior, which is actually not true. They're just basically slaves to the nobility. And the interesting thing in Mistborn is that the nobility have the ability to have magical powers, which is called allomancy, which is magic over metal. So they eat metal, and then they can do different things while burning different types of metal. So they can affect emotions, they can pull themselves into the air and jump and stuff like that. And it's just really, really cool. The whole magical system is what makes this book really, really awesome. And then there's a really good story behind it, and then there's really awesome characters behind it. So it's just a big pile of awesomeness. And a group of Mistborn, which is basically people who are able to control all the metals, and Mistlings, which are people who are able to control one type of metal, they come together and they try to plot against the Lord Ruler. I read the first book, I'm currently reading the second book. First book is awesome, the second book is even more awesome, and I can't wait to finish the series! So these were my top books in 2013. Please tell me what were your favorite books in 2013. Which books have you read that I've mentioned here? And tell me your opinion. Please do it. I want to know all the good books in this world, and I want to read all of them, but there's not enough time. Okay, thanks for watching my video, and see you next time. Bye bye. Mwah.